So I commend this bill to the House.
That's right.
Mr. Speaker.
Moana Mackie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Even for that member, that was a ridiculously short speech. And if he really thinks that what Andrew Williams was saying was so wrong, maybe he could have taken a bit of time to earn his $140,000 a year salary to actually put the counterfactual to that, rather than saying that was rubbish, I commend this bill. Unfortunately, that's the quality of debate we've come to expect from the National Party. Mr. Speaker, Labour will be opposing this piece of legislation. And what we've seen, what was that, Mr. Macleay? I'm sorry, a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
A point of order, Moana Mackie.
I take deep offence at being told that I'm being racist by Mr. Macleay.
That's right, I heard it too.
Did the member say that?
Speaking of the point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I'm asking the member a question. I didn't hear it. Did he use those words?
Not directed to that member. No.
Did you use those words? Well, the member will withdraw and apologise.
I withdraw and apologise. Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
A point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I was talking about something someone else said, not directed to that member.
I don't care. If the member, please sit down. If the member was using those words in the House, it's inappropriate. Moana Mackie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, Labour will be opposing this piece of legislation. We do agree that it's important that we uphold our international obligations, of which this is one, but there were a number of options on the table to the government in terms of how they meet those obligations, and the user pays approach that has been chosen is enormously regressive. Currently funded out of general taxation, the benefits of being signed up to this International Energy Agency agreement means that all of New Zealand benefits. And I heard the Minister speaking, who said, this protects our economy from price shocks. There are reasons why we do this. We're hugely reliant on oil in this country. Well, that to me says that this is a public good. This is not just about people who drive cars. This is actually about our entire economy, and as such I don't think it's unreasonable therefore that the funding for this, and the funding is increasing and does need to increase, comes out of general taxation. Because whenever we see something like this in the Labour Party, we like to pass what's called really an equity ruler over what we're doing, and this will hit people who have no alternatives to driving their car to work. I'm thinking of the shift worker who lives in a part of provincial New Zealand where public transport is not very widespread. It certainly doesn't run at night. Even in the cities, there are limitations on when public transport runs. They have a car. Walking or cycling that late at night when they're doing shift work isn't an option. Well, this will put their petrol up. It's regressive. It's incredibly regressive on the poorest families. And it's the same thing that we saw with GST, again, a very regressive approach, when in fact the benefits of having these stockpiles are there for all New Zealanders. It's ridiculous to say that it's only people who drive cars that get the benefit of this. I tell you what, if we ended up in some really big oil price shock, people with cars would be the first people being told you can't drive them. Actually, these reserves are going to be used for running other things in our economy. And actually, think about the carless days back when we had the last price shock. It's actually those people who drive the cars will be the first who will be asked to stop using oil. So why are they the ones who are then going to be paying for it? So from our perspective in the Labour Party, we cannot understand the arguments for burdening a small group of New Zealanders when actually the benefits are applicable for all. And especially when the government also, at the same time, is doing nothing about the apparent price gouging that is already happening in terms of the price of carbon. So we heard evidence at the last ETS Select Committee from Gull, who had to purchase their fuel from the other four big oil companies, that they were being charged carbon prices hugely in excess of what the market was currently pricing carbon at. And there's no transparency around that. As long as they don't say that they're charging something different, they're perfectly entitled to make a profit off carbon. But this government has sat on their hands and done nothing about the increases in electricity prices and fuel prices as a result of that price gouging. And that has hurt some of the poorest families as well. So from our perspective, this is a national good. Having the energy security is a national good, so it should be general taxation that covers that, not a targeted levy at people who drive cars. And one of the There have been 2 points that government members have made. One, this is about our international reputation. Absolutely agree. We can't be reneging on these kinds of agreements. Why is it, though, that the National Party only cares about our international reputation when it comes to how much oil we're keeping in the country? When it comes to our polluted waterways, when it comes to our complete inaction on climate change, when it comes to the consistent undermining of our clean, green image, they're nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, international reputation doesn't matter. But God forbid we get pointed out that we don't have enough oil in the country and suddenly they're all about international reputation. A little bit of consistency from the National Party would be nice when they're considering our standing on the world stage and how we are viewed in that respect. So the second point that government members have made has been, well, this is why we need more oil and gas exploration, because this is based on our net imports. So the more that we export, the cheaper these levies are going to be. But if you read the regulatory impact statement, there is another alternative. We could stop using as much oil. We could reduce the need to import as much oil. We could support the biofuels industry. We could develop the alternatives which would, one, give us energy security in our own right in New Zealand, far more energy security than we have, being hugely reliant on a product that we overwhelmingly have to import. But the government's plan is just, well, we'll just keep trying to find more oil, and as we've seen so far, this is a high-risk area. There's no guarantees that we're actually going to find commercial yields of oil. But we do know that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there in biofuels and alternative energy sectors that we could be capitalising on right now. And I say to the National Party, you can do both. This doesn't have to be an either-or. You could do both. And if the government were to do both, then that would reduce the cost of these levies. So it comes to the question, why, oh why, are we taxing biofuels as part of this bill? Why are biofuels one of the energy sources that are going to be levied? It's extraordinary. How are we going to incentivise production of biofuels if we make them more expensive by levying them to pay for more oil? Why would we not exclude biofuels? Because they actually help us reduce the cost of these levies, reduce the amount that we need to import into the country. It beggars belief, especially when you see just how many exemptions that there are already under this particular levy. So at the moment, jet fuel for domestic use isn't used, other petroleum products aren't used, and let's be quite clear, we use oil in this country for a lot more than just energy. Most of our world is made of oil. And so this is not just about energy, but none of those other applications or uses of petroleum are going to be targeted by this levy. LPG is not going to be targeted by this levy, bitumen, solvents, and as I said, jet fuel for domestic use. There are all these exemptions, so why can we not exempt biofuels? And I want the next National Party speaker to answer that. If we can exempt all those other things, and let me remind you that the government's, in the regulatory impact statement, they said, oh, it's because at the moment there's not a lot of biofuel production in New Zealand, so it's very small. Well, there's not going to be if we keep taxing it out of existence to pay for more oil. And interestingly enough, the reason given for why LPG isn't included in this particular levy is because the sizes are so small as to not be worth it. So that argument can be rolled out for other fossil fuels, but for biofuels, no, they're included, they're taxed, despite the fact that they actually help us reduce the amount of oil that we need to import, which would ultimately reduce the levy that needs to be paid. So I want to finally also come to another worrying part of the bill, which is that it introduces a regulation-making power that would give the Minister the ability, by ordering Council, so without having to come through Parliament, to actually increase this levy. So at the moment, the fuels that can be levied are presently specified in the Act, as is the maximum levy rate. And the proposal is that the Act be amended to provide for the Minister of Energy and Resources to make regulations that specify the fuels that can be levied and the levy rate. So at the moment there is a maximum levy rate there in the legislation. This is going to be doing away with that. So I predict we'll see more levy rate increases in years to come. More targeting of one group of people whilst exempting a whole lot of others for no particular good reason. More levies put on biofuels, one of the very industries we want to support. And once again, no move towards energy independence or energy security for New Zealand as a whole. So, yes, we do need to do something about this. No one is suggesting, or that I'm aware of, that we renege on our international obligations, but there were options open to the government which could have reduced the impact on the poorest households, which could have recognised the public good for everyone of energy security, therefore having it come out of general taxation rather than a targeted levy, which could have supported our biofuels industry rather than adding another tax to them which will make it harder for them to develop and for us to achieve the kind of energy security we need in this country, and which would support our international reputation, not just on how much oil we have stockpiled, but on how much we are doing to live up to our clean, green, 100% pure brand, and this bill does nothing to achieve that.
Speaker.
Dr. Sean Yang.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support